This is a special bonus episode of the glitch Panopticon, called the Telescopic World and its geopolitical implications. In this episode, we will be talking about the design of the telescopic world. In the glitch Panopticon, we discussed how a psychic telescope uses archetypal links as well as a structure or lens to transmit a monologue or conversation from subject to receiver. This design is correct, but ultimately fails to reflect the fundamental overlapping telescopic nature of identity in this reality. A psychic telescope doesn't create the overlap between subject and receiver, it merely makes it possible for the receiver to perceive it. The overlap is a manifestation of the telescopic design of the world in which we live. For example, you may be having a conversation with a client about their file with your firm. But this conversation, comprised of placeholders and key words, represents the particular. In the general, that is, the conversation which possesses the same key words, but for which the placeholders are substituted key terms, with more global implications. In other words, the archetypal link between subject and receiver involves the overlapping of identity, such that each is a lateral alter of the other. Which is to say, that our identity is telescopic, comprising the particular circumstances of our linear existence, but also parallel to that are multiple linear streams, each reflecting a continuum of importance to global events. In effect, changes within the particulars of our life have global implications. The arrangement of objects in the life of the receiver reflects a symbolic organization of said objects in some higher alter, whose particulars are within the general, that is, have global implications. I call this the telescopic world. Identity. The objects of consciousness. The particular. The general. They are all telescopic. Within the particulars of your life, each object represents something else, something higher. And they keywords hold the telescope together. The implications of this telescopic design are profound. No matter how ignominious or obscure your life, above your action is a parallel arrangement of particulars in some other person's life. The US government uses this property of a telescopic world to create backchannels, through psychic networks, transmitters/receivers. Individual receivers' lives, in the particular, represent key objects of significance in the general, producing a telescopic effect. The overriding link between the mind of receiver and the subject is created by a common worldview. Individual receivers are nurtured in a particular direction so as to produce overlapping worldviews with some subject. This transmitter/receiver's life is then dictated by the actions of the subjects in the general. Each action in the general produces a feedback loop in the particular, generating a kind of top-down telescopic effect. Transmitter-receivers have usefulness in creating multiple such backchannels through a common orientation to objects as some class of subjects. In other words, the common alignment by worldview of the receiver/transmitter produces overlap with a series of subjects, which permits the transmitter to receive conversations from all of them, as a node within a psychic network. All multinational news thus reflects shifts in the particular in the general and vice versa. The psychic telescope maintains this top-down control by coordinating coincident action, by linking individuals on both sides of the political spectrum contrary to political boundaries. In other words, by othering people within their own society, they generate telescopic relationships with the targets of their psychic spying. Opposition within one country becomes a back channel for information from another. Linking opposition to the majority to the opposing pole of the geopolitical sphere allows them to spy on their opponents using their own people. Transmitter/receivers, psychic spies, are thus a useful tool for not just the funneling of information out of geopolitical opponents, but also creating communication channels with foreign adversaries who might be willing to turn. The telescopic world is not just a product of a natural overlap, or psychic telescope. It is being used by the US government to manipulate world affairs. By linking their internal opposition to foreign geopolitical rivals, they gain access to immeasurable and workable intelligence on the internal operations of foreign states. More than that, by creating a telescopic relationship, they can influence events in foreign states through a feedback loop between the actions of the transmitter/receiver in the particular and the actions of the subject. All without putting their citizens in harm's way, or risking democratic implosion. Internal opposition becomes a tool against the opponent. This is the psychic telescope. This is the backchannel. But it is also a symptom of global cooperation and coordinated action. The interweaving of telescopic perception is only possible in a world created by interconnection and globalization. Closed societies do not exchange enough information to permit a psychic telescope to work. You have to have biographical information about the subject. Knowledge about their worldview. Without this information you cannot receive through the psychic telescope. Only an open world can be used to produce the telescopic effect. Information sharing is the only way to interlink and connect disparate peoples into coordinated action. Which means that to enable transmitter receivers to function effectively as spies, you have to have allies. You must have enough information. When you are dealing with closed societies, only in-person spies can be effective in acquiring the information needed to transmit using a psychic telescope. Thus, the first step in any spying program must be the opening of the information sharing between your country and the foreign state. If you cannot open information channels, you cannot use psychic spies to acquire information and generate backchannels. Thus, states such as North Korea, you would need on-the-ground spies in order to get the information to transmit. Or perhaps through the use of satellites and other forms of at-a-distance spying technology. This also tells us that any information you can acquire about a foreign power's political scene is crucial to psychic spying and the creation of psychic backchannels. Only a fully closed society is immune to psychic spying. Glasnost was the end of the Soviet Union. As soon as they began to share information with the West, the Cold War was over. Globalization was inevitable. So was the creation of a massive network of psychic spies. But they may have been in use prior to then through allies and other foreign powers. Coordinated action, that is, on any issue, including supply chains, increases efficiency in the economy because it couples the action of actors within the particular to the general. Coordinated action creates globalization or regionalization of the telescopic effect. But it also increases the efficiency of the economy, because you have each problem solver solving multiple problems at the same time. The whole nature of a globalized system is the distribution of problem solving internationally instead of regionally. You don't have one person making one decision, determining one outcome, you have each person solving 10 problems at the same time. Perhaps this is emblematic of the capitalist approach, perhaps the telescopic effect is the product of capitalism as much as coordinated action produces globalization. Linking opposition groups with foreign powers serves the purpose of permitting the use of psychic spying within the territories of geopolitical opponents through foreign subjects. That's the end of the podcast for today. If you enjoyed it, please like, comment and subscribe.